Most people never set out to sabotage their own lives, but the path to destruction is often carved by the smallest, almost unnoticed steps. Anonymous. There's a harsh, unspoken truth about married women that many men fail to see. It's a truth that makes them vulnerable, not because they are weak, not because they lack morals, but because human nature is inherently wired for temptation. No one wakes up one morning and thinks, "Today, I'll throw away everything I've built." No, it's a gradual unraveling. The harmless conversations, the fleeting glances, the way her heart races just a little when she receives a text from someone who isn't her husband. Psychologists have studied this phenomenon for years, naming it the slow erosion of boundaries. One small step, one fleeting thought at a time, until one day she looks into the mirror and no longer recognizes the reflection staring back at her. So, why are some married women so easy to draw in? And more importantly, how do they convince themselves that it's justified? That's exactly what we're about to uncover. Before we break down further, the course is reopened, but it not be for long, only 50 spots. You think you have time? You don't. Every second you wait is another second someone else is out there getting ahead, taking what could have been yours. The girl you want? Don't even think for a second she'll stick around while you sit there doing nothing. You have a choice, stay stuck or learn the secrets that will change everything. On. The unspoken void. Why some married women seek external attention. Great marriages are partnerships. It can't be a great marriage without being a partnership. Helen Mirren. A strong marriage at its core is a partnership, one that can endure through time, overcome trials, and stand resilient against temptations. But unfortunately, not all marriages maintain their initial strength. Over time, some women, despite their vows and commitment, find themselves drawn to attention outside of their marriage. And while it may seem like a simple matter of physical attraction, the truth is far more complex. It's rooted in psychological needs that often go unmet. The mistake most people make is assuming that these women are simply looking for an escape or a way out of their marriage. In reality, many of them aren't searching for something to run away from, but rather something they've lost along the way. Human beings by nature are wired for connection, and for women, this need runs deep, especially in terms of emotional intimacy. In the early stages of a marriage, this bond is powerful. Late night conversations, shared glances, and that intoxicating feeling of truly being seen and heard. The connection feels electric, and it sustains the relationship. But as time passes, the excitement of novelty begins to fade. Routine takes over, and what was once a thrilling adventure becomes predictable. The deep, soulful conversations are replaced by logistical discussions about groceries and bills, and the passion slowly fades into a sense of duty. Most devastating of all, she begins to feel invisible in the eyes of the one person who once made her feel cherished. This is where the real danger begins to creep in. Dr. John Gottman, a renowned psychologist specializing in relationships, argues that the true killer of relationships is not conflict, it's indifference. When a woman no longer feels truly noticed or appreciated by her husband, her subconscious mind begins to seek validation elsewhere, often without her even being fully aware of it. People will go to great lengths to avoid the loneliness that comes from feeling unseen, even if it means losing a sense of self in the process. As Mitch Albom wisely puts it, a simple compliment from a stranger, a conversation with a man who actually listens, a moment when she feels interesting again. Suddenly, that tiny interaction feels like oxygen after years of suffocation. Marriage, as beautiful and stable as it can be, comes with its share of predictability and responsibility. Yet, the downside of stability is that it often kills excitement and novelty. This is known in psychology as the Coolidge effect, the idea that novelty triggers desire, and people, both men and women, are naturally drawn to the thrill of the unknown. If a woman has been married for years and each day feels the same as the last, with each interaction starting to feel more like a routine, even the smallest spark of something new can feel electrifying. It's not because she doesn't love her husband or because she's a bad person, it's because she misses the excitement of feeling wanted, of feeling special in someone's eyes again. As F. Scott Fitzgerald once wrote, "We are most alive when we are in love, but love is not just about being together. It's about being chosen again and again. For a woman who has lost touch with that feeling of being desired, an encounter with someone who pursues her, who makes her feel like she's still 20, captivating, can bring her back to a version of herself she thought she had long lost, the confident, vibrant, and effortlessly attractive woman she once was. And though she may never intend to cross any lines, she finds herself drawn closer to them because in those fleeting moments she feels alive again. But there's another critical factor at play in why some married women are vulnerable to external validation: the loss of social identity. Many women, after marriage, experience a shift in how they perceive themselves. Before marriage, they were individuals, mysterious, independent, full of passion and interests. But once they're married, their identities often become consumed by their roles: wife, mother, caretaker, supporter. While these roles are beautiful and meaningful, they can also be restrictive. Over time, a woman may begin to feel as though she's lost herself in the process of taking care of others, and her sense of individuality fades. If a woman feels like she no longer knows who she is beyond her roles, she might start seeking out interactions that allow her to feel like an individual again, separate from her role as a wife or a mother. Sometimes, this interaction comes in the form of another man, someone who sees her as more than just someone's wife or mother, but as the person she once was. A woman might start to crave the feeling of being admired for her individuality again, the woman who was once mysterious, passionate, and desirable in her own right. And when she finds that attention, even if it's just a spark of recognition, it can feel like a lifeline to the woman she used to be. Number 2. The justification game. The mind will always find a way to justify what the heart has already decided. Anonymous. It's a universal truth. No one wakes up one day and consciously chooses to betray their marriage. Betrayal doesn't unfold in an instant. It's a gradual, insidious process that creeps in slowly, one small step at a time. The first misstep is almost always minor, seemingly innocent. The real danger, however, lies in how a woman can rationalize these tiny actions to herself long before they manifest into something more. Guilt is an unbearable burden. It weighs heavily on the conscience, making it nearly impossible to continue down a path of self-deception without justifying the behavior. That's why, for many women, the slow slide into emotional or physical betrayal is often justified in the deepest corners of their mind before the consequences even appear on the horizon. Once they can convince themselves that what they're doing isn't really wrong, the weight of guilt becomes easier to bear. So how does this happen? How do women rationalize crossing the line? At first, everything feels harmless. A little attention, a few casual conversations. What's the harm in that? I'm just talking to him, she might tell herself. It's not like I'm cheating. I'm just enjoying the moment. The human mind is a master of self-deception, particularly when it comes to matters of morality. When something feels good but contradicts one's values, the mind works overtime to bridge that gap. This process is known as cognitive dissonance, the internal conflict that arises when our actions and beliefs no longer align. The more dissonance, the more the brain strives to resolve it, often by bending the truth. Psychologists suggest that when this tension becomes overwhelming, the mind will distort reality to protect itself. Richard Feynman famously said, "The easiest person to fool is yourself." And this is exactly what happens. What starts as a small, seemingly insignificant flirtation is gradually warped in the woman's mind until it feels justified. She starts downplaying her actions. It's just harmless flirting. It's not like I'd actually do anything. She shifts the blame, telling herself, if my husband paid more attention to me, I wouldn't need this. She compartmentalizes her feelings and behavior, saying, this has nothing to do with my marriage. This is just something separate for me. But here's the insidious truth. The more a woman justifies her actions, the further she will inevitably go. The rationalizations don't stop. They expand, building on themselves. Each small step feels less significant than the last, until suddenly the boundaries that once felt impenetrable begin to crumble. For many women, the first betrayal isn't physical, it's emotional. This is what makes it so dangerous and often overlooked. Physical cheating, kissing, touching, sleeping with another person has clear, defined lines. There's no ambiguity in crossing that threshold. But emotional affairs? They're a different story. That's where the lines blur. Late night texts, conversations that dive deeper than they should, sharing personal struggles with another man instead of her husband. All these little exchanges add up, building an intimacy that may feel innocent at first. It's just emotional. There's no harm in talking, she convinces herself. But emotional intimacy is just as potent as physical intimacy. In fact, it can be even more powerful. When a woman begins sharing her innermost thoughts, feelings, and vulnerabilities with someone other than her husband, she's already beginning to detach from the relationship she has with him. That's when the emotional boundaries start to break down. Cheating isn't always physical. It begins the moment secrets are kept. The moment a woman hides something from her partner, that's when the line has already been crossed. It's easy to dismiss emotional affairs as no big deal, but the reality is they can be far more damaging than physical infidelity. Emotional bonds have a way of deepening and solidifying in ways that physical ones don't. What starts as an innocent connection can evolve into a deep emotional reliance. And once emotions are involved, it's only a matter of time before physical boundaries begin to weaken. The temptation to take things further becomes too much for some to resist. What seemed like innocent flirtation or harmless conversation slowly morphs into something far more dangerous. This is where the real danger lies. Once emotions become deeply intertwined, it becomes increasingly difficult to maintain boundaries. The woman may begin to view the emotional connection she has with the other man as more fulfilling than the one she shares with her husband. This is when the emotional betrayal becomes even more threatening than any physical act. The mind begins to convince her that she deserves the validation, the attention, and the intimacy she's been missing. It no longer feels like betrayal. It feels like a relief, a return to something she once had or perhaps never fully experienced. The "I deserve this" justification. The final and most dangerous rationalization in a married woman's journey toward infidelity is the "I deserve this" mindset. At this stage, self-doubt is gone, replaced by a sense of entitlement. She no longer sees her actions as questionable. They aren't mistakes anymore, they're justifications. I've sacrificed so much for this marriage. I deserve to feel good again. He's ignored me for years. If he doesn't care, why should I? I've been faithful for so long and it's gotten me nowhere. What's the point? This is the point of no return. At this stage, the emotional connection she's formed with another man feels more vivid, more exhilarating, and more real than the marriage itself. Her mind has reshaped reality, twisting betrayal into justice. She doesn't see herself as someone breaking vows. She sees herself as someone reclaiming something stolen from her. And once a person truly believes their actions are justified, nothing can stop them. Because here's the truth. Self-rationalization is the most powerful drug in the world. It numbs guilt, erases consequences, and makes the unthinkable seem logical. The reason married women sometimes become the easiest prey isn't because they're weak-willed or immoral. It's because the human brain is wired to rationalize what feels good. It never starts with the intention to betray. It starts with tiny excuses, seemingly innocent justifications. But if left unchecked, those justifications turn into actions, and once the line is crossed, there's no going back. 3. The breaking point. The chains of habit are too weak to be felt until they are too strong to be broken. Samuel Johnson. Every story has a tipping point, a moment where everything shifts, where what once seemed harmless suddenly carries weight. There's no more casual conversation, no more innocent glances, no more rationalizing away the tension. The game stops being a game. And the most dangerous part? Most women don't even realize they've crossed the threshold until there's no turning back. It never begins with a grand betrayal. It begins quietly, subtly, so much so that it almost feels like nothing at all. A woman who swore she would never stray doesn't break her vows in a single moment of reckless passion. It happens gradually, in the small spaces of her life, in the pauses between responsibility and routine. It's the first message she sends, knowing she shouldn't, the first lingering touch she doesn't resist, the first secret she keeps, not from her husband, but from herself. And that's the moment everything shifts. The first time is always the hardest, but once the line is crossed, the second time is easier. And the third? Easier still, because what we do repeatedly, we become. Before she even realizes it, the forbidden stops feeling forbidden. It starts feeling normal. She tells herself she's in control, that she could stop if she wanted to. But the truth is, she's already in too deep. The biggest lie people tell themselves on a dangerous path is, I can stop whenever I want. But can they? The science of human behavior suggests otherwise. Neuroscientists have found that romantic and sexual attraction trigger the same reward pathways in the brain as addictive substances. The dopamine rush from an illicit connection feels intoxicating, like a high she never realized she craved. And just like any addiction, quitting isn't as easy as it seems. She may promise herself, this is the last time, but there's always a reason for one more message, one more meeting, one more moment of stolen intimacy. And at this stage, it's not even about the man she's drawn to. It's about the way she feels when she's with him, the way he makes her feel seen, wanted, desired, the way he reminds her of a version of herself she thought she had lost. At first, deception feels unnatural. The first hidden message, the first excuse, the first moment her heart pounds when her husband casually asks, "Who are you texting?" It feels wrong, but the human mind is disturbingly adaptable. Guilt turns into justification. Hesitation turns into confidence. She learns how to cover her tracks, to compartmentalize so effectively that even she believes her own lies. And before long, the guilt doesn't weigh on her as heavily as it once did. She stops feeling torn, she stops feeling conflicted, and then something irreversible happens. She stops seeing her husband as her primary relationship, the affair where the physical or emotional becomes the real connection. Her husband, the man she once built a life with, starts to feel like the outsider. He becomes the one she hides from, the one she deceives, the one who unknowingly exists on the sidelines while her heart belongs somewhere else. And when that shift happens, the story only ends one of two ways. She either gets caught or she leaves, no longer able to live a double life. It's not that she planned for it to happen. Most married women who cheat aren't looking for an affair. They aren't looking to betray the man they once vowed to love forever. What they're looking for is something they lost, a feeling, an excitement, a validation they can't seem to find at home anymore. And when they find it, walking away feels impossible. Not because they don't love their husbands, but because they convince themselves that what they found is something they'll never get back in their marriage. And once that belief settles in, nothing is ever the same again. If you understand this, you hold power. The power to see what others miss, the power to recognize the warning signs before they become irreversible, the power to never be blind to the game again. Because in the end, the scariest part isn't how affairs begin, it's how easily they become unstoppable. If you found this insight valuable, make sure to subscribe to The Girl's Mind for more wisdom on mastering your life and attraction. Until next time, stay strong, stay centered, and always remember, the key to attraction isn't in chasing, it's in being. But for those of you who are serious about stepping up and taking control, I've created a one-on-one chat with me. Choose your package and let's solve any problem you're facing, whether it's crushing your goals or handling that conversation with a girl.